So what's good, TMG fam? It's your boy L, and I'm back with another reaction. How y'all feel? Welcome back to the channel. Salute. Now, these theories will make you question everything. And remember, this is for entertainment purposes only. Let's check it out.
Number 20. One big lie. We all know the age-old debate since that one summer of '69. Was the moon landing real or staged? While most of us take it at face value, given the overwhelming evidence, a persistent group still holds on to the theory that it was all a ruse. So let's talk about this first. Can you imagine a secret so big that over 400,000 people would need to keep it?
No.
That's the number of engineers, technicians, and scientists who worked tirelessly to ensure Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins made it to the moon and back safely.
I'm glad they started right there. Because you don't know, I don't know, 10 people who can keep a secret. Name 10 people you know, you put your life on it, you bet everything in your bank account that they could keep a secret. You don't know 10, I don't know 10. So to think that many people would do it, great place to start.
With such a vast number, one would think that if the moon landing were indeed a sham, there would be more whistleblowers, right? However, among these countless individuals, only one person, Bill Casing, claimed that the moon landing was fake. His book, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion swindle, became the foundational text for moon landing deniers. And yet, when you break it down, it's essentially one testimony against hundreds of thousands. Despite this overwhelming majority, the seeds of doubt sown by Casing's theory have grown deep roots. Today, in an era abundant with information and, well, misinformation, many continue to believe that the moon landing was faked. But well, all we can do is take a look at the data presented to us. So let's head on to the next entry. Before we go on...
So see, I'm on the side of the majority. I mean, not one dude who could have been disgruntled, could have been upset at somebody or something like that and just felt like sabotaging the whole thing. No, I'm on the side of the majority.
Like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now. Number 19. Flags on the Moon. First up is one of the most iconic events in the Apollo 11 mission, when the American flag was planted on the moon's surface. This symbolized the epitome of human exploration. However, not many are aware of the lunar mishap this flag experienced. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin unfurled the flag, it was an incredible sight to behold. But as the lunar module prepared to depart, the force from its ascent engine knocked the flagpole to the ground. Aldrin caught a last glimpse through the window and noticed the flag toppled by the exhaust. And what about the flags from subsequent moon missions? Well, the succeeding moon missions left behind flags on the moon, but because of the harsh lunar environment, it's likely not the same as how it was before it left our planet. Without an atmosphere to shield from the sun's unfiltered UV rays, these flags would have faced a relentless solar onslaught. Experts speculate that any colors on those flags would be bleached out by now, rendering them completely white. Number 18.
That's why we got to get back to the moon, man. I want to see what the flags look like. See what the sun could do over time to those flags, man. I want to see it, bro.
The smell of moon dirt. The smell of the moon isn't really discussed when talking about the moon landing. When Armstrong and Aldrin climbed back into their lunar module after that historic moonwalk, something unexpected happened. Their gear, covered in moon dust, emitted a peculiar scent. Aldrin described it as similar to spent gunpowder. It was unexpected, to say the least. Now you might be wondering, how can the moon, a place without air, even have a smell? And you're not alone. Back on Earth, scientists were scratching their heads. The moon is exposed to unfiltered solar radiation. This means the surface, bombarded continuously, undergoes changes that can release peculiar smells. One theory suggests that when the moon dust comes in contact with oxygen, it reacts, and that reaction might produce the odd aroma. But honestly, we're still unsure at this point. Number 17.
I wonder what's the long-term effects of that. See, this is the type of stuff we got to deal with when thinking about possibly inhabiting some of these other planets. What's the long-term effects of something like that?
What it took to take part in the mission. When you gaze up at the night sky and see astronauts floating around in space, it might seem like a dream job. But trust me, it's not easy.
No.
There's a reason why people only take on this job if they're truly passionate about the field. After all, the salary you'd receive isn't exactly big, and you'd also be risking your life willingly for future missions. The Apollo 11 crew knew that pretty early into the mission. First, just to gain the title of astronaut, there are already a lot of requirements. You need top-notch education, usually in engineering, biological science, physical science, or mathematics, plus a good chunk of flying experience for those aiming to be commanders or pilots. Physical fitness? Absolute must. And let's not forget exceptional vision, hearing, and blood pressure levels. In fact, Armstrong, Aldren, and Collins had to walk sideways just to prepare for the moon's low gravity. It's more complicated than it sounds, and looks a bit comical, but it was essential. On the moon, every step can send you floating, so astronauts need to perfect their movements and balance. The trio underwent simulations like mock lunar landscapes, hours inside spacesuit mock-ups, and training inside modules that mimic the real ones. It was rigorous, intense, and grueling, but it was necessary. Every second counted, every scenario had to be planned for, and every reaction needed to be instinctive. And although this part isn't as well known, their effort was rewarded in the end. After all, their names are still known everywhere to this day.
Facts.
Facts.
They went down in the history books, but I'm sitting here and I'm still stuck. I know where y'all know exactly where my mind went to. My face probably was all scrunched up when he said they don't make much. And are you kidding me? I gotta look that up when this video is over with. I need to know. That was every kid's childhood dream, to be either an astronaut, doctor, policeman, fireman. Is that still the case these days? I thought they made money. Why wouldn't they? And I expected the job to be rigorous and demanding, and you probably had to be in good shape and had to be super smart. But to not make, that's crazy. This world is backwards, man. It's backwards.
16. President Nixon had a speech prepared if the moon landing failed. When Apollo 11 was gearing up to make history, everyone looked excited. However, others also gazed in trepidation. After all, there was a race to the moon in 1969. Naturally, this immense feat came with a lot of risks, and everyone knew that the celebration could just as well turn into the three astronauts' funeral. While President Richard Nixon hoped for the success of the space mission, he was also prepared for its failure. In fact, he had prepared a speech in case the moon landing ended in tragedy. A sobering thought, isn't it? Before the world celebrated Neil, Buzz, and Michael's triumphant return, leaders were contemplating the stark possibility of leaving them stranded on the moon. Penned by Nixon's speechwriter, William Safire, the draft would have been revealed in the event of a moon disaster. The words spoke of the astronauts who went to the moon to explore in peace and would stay on the moon to rest in peace. It was a somber acknowledgement of the mission's extreme risks. But what was the backup plan in case something happened? Well, the truth is, there wasn't really a backup plan. The experts had done their best, but space is unpredictable. The technology was still in its infancy, and the moon's surface was unknown territory. Every step, every decision, every rocket ignition was a gamble, and NASA knew it. But as we all know, the mission was a roaring success. Armstrong's iconic words echoed across the world. Aldrin followed him on the surface, and Collins circled above, waiting for their return. Perhaps luck was also in their favor.
I wonder if Neil and Buzz knew about that. If they knew that he had prepared a speech. I mean, of course, going into it, in their mind, they knew what could happen and the risk that they were taking, of course. But I'm wondering if I would expect stuff like that not to even get out. Like, that should have never gotten out. Of course, he has to be prepared, but that should have never leaked out. Nobody should have ever known that. See, you think people can keep a secret? We can't even keep stuff like that under wraps.
15. Neil Armstrong's mother. When Apollo 11 was in the limelight, ready to change human history forever, people all over the globe held their breath, but none more so than the families of the astronauts. Neil Armstrong, the first man chosen to step on the moon's surface, had a particularly concerned family watching here on Earth. His mother, Viola Armstrong. Mrs. Armstrong voiced a concern that many of us might find amusing, to say the least. She worried that the moon's crust might be too soft, a sort of cosmic quicksand that wouldn't support her son's weight. She feared Neil might just sink into the lunar surface. Well, that is a valid concern, right? I would overthink too. This speaks volumes about our knowledge of the moon at the time. Despite the advancements and the numerous unmanned missions that had landed on the moon before Apollo 11, the moon was still largely a mystery. Its surface composition, its geological makeup, and even its origin were topics of heated debate and speculation. Scientists, of course, had reason to believe that the moon's surface, while covered in a layer of dust and loose rock, was stable enough to support the lunar module and the astronauts. Number 14.
I didn't even think about that. And then what if that's your partner? So if it was Neil stuck, and let's just say the surface was like quicksand, and Neil got stuck, what does Buzz do? Of course he's going to try to get him out, but if he can't, does he have to then turn and make the decision to leave him there? Dog, that's another added level of pressure. Man, another reason why they should make a lot more money. See how I tied it back to the money? They should make a lot of money, bro. They shouldn't have to worry about anything.
What we left behind. When Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin journeyed to the moon on Apollo 11, their historic mission wasn't just about planting a flag and collecting samples. Along with their footprints, they left an assortment of objects, some intentional, some as mere castaways of their mission. Aside from the flag, they left behind a golden olive branch, symbolizing peace. This tiny 3.5-inch golden replica of an olive branch was left on the lunar surface, a gesture to show that mankind came in peace for all humanity. But then, there were also other things: discarded packaging from their meals, used wet wipes, and even human waste bags. That's right, there were bags containing human waste on the moon. Well, I guess that's a free human specimen for the aliens. The astronauts also left behind various tools, cameras, and seismic equipment to measure moonquakes. Among the more personal items left by Aldrin and Armstrong was a patch from the ill-fated Apollo 1 mission, paying tribute to their fallen colleagues, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. And Apollo 11 isn't the only mission that left behind their mementos. Subsequent missions also deposited their share of peculiar items, including a family photo from Charles Duke of Apollo 16, and even a tiny sculpture called the Fallen Astronaut. But of course, not everyone would have the privilege of seeing these human trinkets in lunar dust. Number 13. The pen that saved the mission. Now, when we think of space exploration, our minds often drift to cutting-edge technology, powerful rockets, and complex computer systems. But did you know that a single pen saved a multi-million-dollar mission? After landing on the moon in the lunar module, Eagle, Armstrong, and Aldrin were busy preparing for their historic moonwalk. However, upon checking their surroundings, Aldrin noticed something concerning. A circuit breaker switch on the Eagle's control panel had broken off. This particular breaker was responsible for activating the engine that would lift them off the moon and reunite them with Michael Collins in the orbiting
I think that's pretty important. Yeah, we definitely got to figure that out.
command module. In simpler terms, without this switch, they might have been stranded on the moon indefinitely. Can you imagine that? There you are, having just made history, and a tiny broken piece of plastic could jeopardize your entire mission and your life. But perhaps it's great that astronauts are also trained for such scenarios. And so, using a felt-tip pen, Aldrin solved the missing circuit breaker switch, using it as a makeshift one. When the critical moment came to initiate their ascent from the moon's surface, Aldrin used the pen to push in the circuit breaker, and the engine fired up as planned. The two astronauts soared from the moon, reunited with Collins, and made their way back to Earth. Now just imagine if that pen wasn't with him at the time.
That's what I was just sitting here thinking, fam. That pen better be in a museum somewhere. That pen better be in a museum, and nobody better ever touch it or steal it. Can you imagine? Just made history and almost became history, and a pen saved your life. I wonder who was the company or what pen brand that was. Who manufactured that pen? That company business should have went to booming. I'd have advertised off of that alone.
12.
Still be
Our
advertising.
smartphones are better than Apollo 11's computer. When Apollo 11 made its historic journey to the moon, it was backed by some of the most cutting-edge technology of the era. Yet, if you were to compare that technology to the smartphones that you have today, the difference would be incredibly unbelievable. The Apollo Guidance Computer, or the AGC, was the brain behind the moon landing, and it weighed in at a hefty 70 pounds. It had approximately 64 kilobytes of memory and operated at 0.043 megahertz. To put that into perspective, today's average smartphone, which weighs mere ounces, boasts multi-core processors with speeds measured in gigahertz and storage capabilities in the terabytes. Our phones can easily store at least 3 HD movies, while the AGC wouldn't have been able to store a 3-minute MP3 file. But it's not just about raw numbers. Think about the functionality. The AGC was designed for specific tasks related to navigation and guidance. Your smartphone, on the other hand, can make calls, browse the internet, capture photos and videos, play music, can run a myriad of apps ranging from games to specialized scientific tools, and so much more. Another point to consider is user-friendliness. The AGC required extensive training and was operated using numeric keypads and a series of switches. Your smartphone, however, features a touchscreen with intuitive icons and can even respond to voice commands. And while the AGC was groundbreaking for its time, its software wasn't as flexible as today's. If there was a bug in the system, it couldn't be patched or updated in real time as we do with smartphones. The Apollo 11 crew faced a few alarms due to software issues during their descent, which thankfully were quickly diagnosed as non-threatening. Now this only highlights just how astounding the moon landing mission was. Number 11. Scientists were worried about a moon germ. When the astronauts of Apollo 11 made their historic return from the moon, the celebrations on Earth were slightly tempered by a particular concern. What if the moon held microscopic life that could threaten life on our planet? The idea seems almost outlandish now, but in the late 1960s, much was still known about the lunar environment. While the chances were slim, the risk of introducing potential moon-borne pathogens to Earth was something scientists wanted to avoid at all costs. To mitigate this concern, upon splashing down in the Pacific Ocean and being retrieved by the USS Hornet, Armstrong, Aldren, and Collins didn't immediately receive a hero's welcome. Instead, they were ushered into a specially designed Airstream trailer, which would be their home for the next 21 days. During this period of seclusion, the astronauts underwent medical examinations and were closely monitored for any sign of illness or abnormality. As the days passed, it became abundantly clear that the astronauts were in good health and showed no signs of carrying any alien organisms. Well, I guess it's better to be safe than sorry. Number 10. Civil rights activists had the front row. The Apollo moon landing of 1969 is one of humanity's greatest achievements. However, the road to this monumental event was not without its challenges and critics. Beyond the technological hurdles, the moon landing occurred during a tumultuous time in American history, marked by the civil rights movement and societal demands for change. While the space race was seen by many as a testament to human capability and a point of national pride, some questioned the vast sums of money being poured into the Apollo program. They wondered if these resources might be better used addressing pressing issues on Earth, such as poverty, racial inequality, and social justice. One of the most vivid demonstrations of this sentiment happened in July 1969, just days before the Apollo 11's launch.
And what's crazy is a lot of those things that we were dealing with back then, we're still dealing with to this day. To this day. That's the crazy part to me, just to hear that then and look at and sit back and survey everything that's going on now. Still seeing it.
Civil rights activists, led by the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, organized a protest at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The protest was named the Poor People's Campaign and sought to highlight the perceived imbalance in government spending on space.
Wow, you saw that sign? $12 a day to feed an astronaut. We could feed a starving child for 8. And then the other sign.
Poor People's Campaign and sought to highlight the perceived
hungry kids can't eat moon rocks. Wow, they never talked about that. I didn't know it was like protests and different marches and different things going on during that time. I always ask, like, if people who are in the comment section were alive back then to speak up and tell us, like, what was the vibe, what was going on. You know what I mean? Nobody's ever brought this up. Nobody. I never heard about this until now.
Perceived imbalance in government spending on space exploration versus programs to assist America's underserved communities. Well, Instead of strong opposition and resistance, NASA's administrators invited the protest leaders to view the Apollo 11 launch from the VIP
Rockets
viewing
or
area,
rickets.
giving them a front row seat. It was a good gesture, but while many celebrated the achievement, others continued to advocate for greater attention to the pressing issues of the time. Number 9. Buzz Aldrin and the Holy Communion. One of the lesser-known moments of the Apollo 11 mission involved Buzz Aldrin, the lunar module pilot and the second man to walk on the moon. While in space, fulfilling the major progress of mankind, Aldrin took a moment for personal and spiritual matters. Before stepping out of the lunar module and setting foot on the moon's surface, Aldrin radioed back to Earth, asking listeners to contemplate the events unfolding and to give thanks in their own way. What many might not know is that during this time of reflection, Aldrin partook in the Christian sacrament of Holy Communion. Having brought a small kit given by his church's pastor, Aldrin consumed a piece of consecrated bread and a small vial of wine. While Aldrin viewed this as a personal act of faith, he was aware of the diverse audience on Earth and thus chose to keep the ceremony private and quiet. Neil Armstrong, his fellow astronaut, watched silently but did not participate. Well, we're humans after all, and we all have the right to practice our own beliefs as long as it's not harming others. Number 8.
Yeah, but my question is, did he choose to keep it secret or did they suppress it and not want that out? I don't know why. I just feel like it was suppressed. Like they would have chose to do that for some strange reason. Now, if that was his choice, I support that 1000%. But I just feel like they probably suppressed that one.
Number 8. The Soviets' denial of the moon race. It's curious how stories can be rewritten over time, especially when pride and reputation are on the line. The Soviet Union, during the height of the Cold War, was fiercely competitive with the United States in the realm of space exploration. Every launch, every satellite, and every astronaut became symbolic tokens in a high-stakes game of international prestige. The Soviets started strong. They had an impressive list of firsts: the first satellite, the first human in space, and the first woman in space, to name just a few. Naturally, it was believed they'd be the first to place a human on the moon, too. However, as America's Apollo program began achieving milestone after milestone, the winds of the space race began to shift. The USSR faced significant technical challenges and unfortunate setbacks in its attempt to reach the moon with a manned mission. Instead of acknowledging these difficulties, there appeared to be a concerted effort to reshape the narrative. Some Soviet officials began to claim that they had never been racing to the moon at all. It was as if they were suggesting, "We never really wanted to go there in the first place." Was this a genuine shift in priorities, or a way to save face? Many believe it was the latter. The moon, after all, was a significant prize. Having to watch the US flag being planted on its surface must have been a bitter pill to swallow. Number 7. No life insurance. As mentioned earlier, many knew that the Apollo 11 mission was a hit or miss. Either it would mark a big step in the history of mankind, or it would be one tragic moment that would be remembered forever. Naturally, none of the 3 astronauts managed to obtain insurance. After all, insuring someone against potential dangers on Earth is one thing. Covering a lunar expedition is quite another. But as family men...
Yeah, but they should have figured something out. Like, come on, man. We got to figure something out, bro. Like, it's no possible way that we can get some type of fun for these gentlemen. No, man, I don't know about that. I feel like I knew that you wouldn't find an insurance company that was gonna say, yeah, we'll take that on. No, I get that, but putting together like a pool aside for them, some type of, yeah, that should have happened.
These astronauts were deeply concerned about the welfare of their loved ones should the worst happen. And so, the 3 took matters into their own hands.
Okay.
Recognizing the immense value their autographs could fetch, especially if the mission were their last, the trio began signing hundreds of covers or envelopes. The idea was simple. In the unfortunate event they didn't return, these signed covers could be sold, providing a form of life insurance that their families could benefit from.
Okay.
It was a noble act, and it showed just how much the astronauts valued their families, and how they were aware that they might not survive the mission. Number 6.
Like that pool for them should have been started. They should have created a life insurance pool when they first decided that, okay, we're going to put man on the moon. It should have started then. Taking donations. I don't know, just like some of these campaign trails, and they get all these sponsors and donations and different ones that contribute to the campaign. That should have been the same way for that.
Neil Armstrong's spiking heart rate. Now, you need to have a strong will if you plan on stepping foot on the moon, but even the great Neil Armstrong wavered at some point during the mission. During the descent of the lunar module Eagle onto the moon's surface, Armstrong faced a series of unexpected challenges. The intended landing spot was littered with boulders, necessitating a last-minute change to find a safer location. As the module's fuel rapidly dwindled, the gravity of the situation was not lost on anyone, least of all Armstrong. Monitors back on Earth, closely watching the vitals of both astronauts, noticed a marked spike in Armstrong's heart rate. At one critical juncture, it soared to an astonishing 150 beats per minute. Even with how physically fit he was, that's incredibly high. Yet, despite his heart racing, Armstrong's skills and composure shone through. He expertly maneuvered the lunar module to a safer landing spot with just seconds of fuel to spare. Number 5.
Wow.
The wristwatch that reached the moon. Now, for watch collectors out there, this might be something that could possibly compel you to buy a new addition to your collection. Among the most iconic and intimate pieces of gear from the Apollo 11 mission is a wristwatch, a timepiece that reached the moon. Omega's Speedmaster Professional, colloquially known as the Moonwatch, earned its place in history during that groundbreaking mission.
Wow.
When the call went out for a durable and reliable chronograph that could withstand the harsh conditions of space, Omega's offer stood out among the rest. After vigorous testing, it was chosen by NASA as the official timepiece for its astronauts. Well, if it withstood the conditions in outer space, naturally, it would be able to withstand earthly conditions. Number 4. Fake moon rock. Following the historic Apollo 11 mission, the United States, in a gesture of goodwill, distributed moon rock samples to numerous nations. These tokens were meant to symbolize the collective achievement of mankind, highlighting that the moon landing was a feat for all of humanity. The Netherlands, like many other countries, were presented with what was believed to be a fragment of the moon, given personally to the Netherlands Prime Minister, Willem Drees. He held on to this special present in his private collection until his passing in 1988. Following his death, the rock was passed on by his estate to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Fast forward to a few years later, when this treasured piece underwent a series of tests at Amsterdam's Free University. The outcome was nothing short of astounding. The so-called moon rock was in reality a piece of petrified wood, far from being a billion-year-old relic of our satellite.
See, stuff like this is what I feel like added to all of the debates of the moon landing being fake. When they heard that, they probably took it and ran wild. And it could have been a simple mix-up or something like that. I don't know. Not trying to defend it, because if I was on y'all, I would have ran wild with it too. So I get it. You know what I mean? I get it.
Additionally, there's no concrete evidence to confirm that the rock held by the Rijksmuseum since 1988 is unquestionably the same one that was supposedly presented to former Prime Minister William Drees in 1969. Now, if I received something fake, I'd definitely be angry. How did a piece of fossilized wood come to be displayed as a moon rock? Is it possible that someone at the museum replaced the real moon rock with this piece of wood? Although the details remain murky, it's clear that at some point, a switch occurred. While there's no official statement regarding how this mix-up happened, this incident just further fueled the claims that the United States indeed faked the moon landing. Number 3. It was impossible to fake the moon landings. Now, let's get back to the fact that many continue to believe that the moon landing was faked. Did you know this would be harder than actually doing the entire mission? The 1960s, for all its leaps in space exploration, did not possess the advanced video technology and CGI capabilities that we take for granted today. Capturing the unique reduced gravity movements of astronauts on the lunar surface, the way the lunar dust behaved, and the distinct shadows cast by the sun would have been an extraordinary challenge with the film and video technology available at the time. Recreating the moon's environment on Earth would have demanded a level of sophistication and precision in filmmaking that arguably surpassed the actual task of sending astronauts to the moon. For example, the way the lunar dust, with no atmosphere to interfere, rose and settled during the lunar module's landing would have been nearly impossible to replicate accurately on Earth. And as I've said earlier, over 400,000 souls oversaw this mission. If the moon landing was truly a deception, It would be impossible to keep everyone involved silent, wouldn't it?
Agreed.
Number 2. The Moon Plaque. Now, this isn't exactly an unexpected find, but did you know that there's a plaque on the moon? There, it reads, "Here, men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We come in peace for all mankind." Accompanying this inscription are the signatures of the 3 Apollo 11 astronauts, as well as President Nixon. This is definitely something incredible, and again, perhaps other life forms will be able to see this in the future. And now it's time for today's topic. The truth behind why the first footprints on the moon don't match Neil Armstrong's boots. Rumor has it that the imprint left behind on the lunar surface differs from the tread on Armstrong's official space boots. This supports the idea that the moon landing photos were actually faked. Scientists have their own rebuttal. Experts assert that the unique lunar environment, devoid of moisture and atmosphere, affects the manner in which dust and soil settle. This could potentially cause footprints to appear slightly different from what one might expect. However, many continue to believe that the mismatch between Armstrong's boots and the moon imprint conceals a secret that has remained undisclosed since 1969.
I mean, can you blame them? I can't blame y'all on that one either. Yeah, hey, that's good. If we were doing this in the courtroom and I showed this and that and I was trying to convict somebody of a crime and I showed them that boot imprint and the boot, oh, he walking. Oh, not guilty. Not guilty.
Number 1. Missing tapes. Among the many aspects of the Apollo 11 mission, one mystery that has captured imaginations for years is the curious case of the missing original tapes. As Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin explored the moon's surface, their activities were broadcast to millions on Earth, providing an awe-inspiring visual testimony to human achievement. The footage that most of the world saw was, in fact, a downgrade of the original quality. The raw feed from the moon was a non-standard format that most televisions of the time couldn't broadcast. To show the landing to the world, NASA had to display the original feed on a monitor and then re-record it with a standard television camera. This process resulted in a notable loss in video quality. The original tapes, which would have had clearer and sharper images, were stored after the mission. Over time, however, these tapes became lost in the vast archives of NASA recordings. Years later, when interest in these tapes resurged, another search began. NASA hoped to locate the original recordings, digitize them, and perhaps offer the world a clearer view of that historic lunar walk. However, after extensive investigations, the sad conclusion was that the tapes had likely been accidentally erased and reused during a period in the 1970s and 1980s when there was a tape shortage. The Apollo 11 mission truly is an outstanding one.
That's why I can't wait for us to get back there, man, and really record it with the technology that we have today. I'm treating that day like a holiday, man. I'm gonna set up in my living room, bro. I'm gonna cook. I'm gonna have a nice spread. I'm gonna sit in front of my TV and I'm gonna watch and be a part of that, man. I can't wait. Listen, man, y'all get at me in the comment section and let me know what you thought of this video. And stick around and stay tuned, man. Till next one, I'm gone.